Nathan believed he and Claire were a team like no other. They were high school sweethearts turned lifelong partners, both pursuing ambitious careers while keeping their love alive. Nathan was an architect, meticulous and thoughtful, who spent his days designing elegant homes. Claire, a vivacious marketing executive, thrived in the fast-paced world of high-end fashion campaigns. Their life together was enviable. They had recently bought a modern townhouse in the heart of Seattle, where they spent evenings cooking elaborate meals, hosting friends, and planning trips to places they'd never been. On their 6th wedding anniversary, Nathan surprised Claire with a weekend getaway to the San Juan Islands. They laughed, explored the quiet beaches, and toasted to the life they had built. But behind Nathan's steady love and Claire's magnetic smile, cracks were forming. Nathan didn't see it then, but Claire had begun to drift. The first sign came in the form of late-night texts. Nathan would notice Claire's phone lighting up during dinner, and she'd glance at it quickly before flipping it over. "Work stuff," she'd say casually, dismissing his raised eyebrow. Then there were the nights she started coming home late. Claire explained it away as client dinners and last-minute campaign pitches. "You know how demanding this industry is," she said with a sigh, giving him a peck on the cheek. Nathan trusted her. Why wouldn't he? But one evening, while organizing the laundry, Nathan noticed something odd. Claire's favorite black dress, the one she usually saved for special occasions, was crumpled at the bottom of the hamper. It smelled faintly of cologne, one that wasn't his. Nathan tried to ignore the growing unease in his chest. He told himself not to overthink things. Claire had always been stylish, always surrounded by colleagues who admired her confidence. It didn't mean anything, but the stranger changed everything. One rainy Friday, Nathan left work early to surprise Claire. He picked up a bouquet of her favorite tulips and swung by her office, intending to take her out to dinner. As he parked his car across the street, he spotted Claire through the floor-to-ceiling windows of her building's lobby. She wasn't alone. She stood with a tall man in a tailored suit, laughing at something he'd said. The man leaned in closer than Nathan liked, resting his hand lightly on Claire's arm. She didn't pull away. Nathan's stomach churned as he watched them leave together, stepping into a cab. The tulips in his hand suddenly felt heavy, their vibrant colors mocking the ache in his chest. Nathan spent the weekend in a daze, replaying the scene in his mind. He didn't confront Claire, he couldn't. He needed to know more. Over the next week, Nathan started paying closer attention. He noted when Claire stayed late at work, the way her tone shifted when certain calls came through, and how she avoided eye contact during their conversations. One evening, while Claire was in the shower, Nathan unlocked her laptop. His heart raced as he scrolled through her recent emails and calendar events. At first, there was nothing unusual: meetings, campaign notes, client deadlines. But then he saw a series of emails marked private. The sender's name was David Monroe. Nathan opened the emails, his heart pounding. "Can't stop thinking about last night. You looked incredible. Are we still on for Friday? Same hotel?" Nathan felt his hands tremble as he read the words. The messages were playful, flirtatious, and unmistakably intimate. He stared at the screen, trying to process what he had just discovered. Claire was cheating on him, but instead of confronting her immediately, Nathan made a decision. He needed proof, something undeniable. The following Friday, Nathan told Claire he'd be working late on a new design pitch. "Don't wait up," he said, kissing her on the forehead. Claire smiled, but he didn't miss the flicker of relief in her eyes. Nathan didn't go to the office. Instead, he parked outside the boutique hotel Claire had mentioned in her emails. He waited in his car, his chest tightening with every minute that passed. Finally, Claire arrived. She stepped out of a cab, dressed in a sleek black dress, her hair perfectly styled. She glanced around before heading inside. Moments later, David followed. Nathan gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. He had his proof. That night, Nathan didn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling, his mind spinning with anger, hurt, and disbelief. By morning, he had made a plan. When Claire came home, Nathan was waiting for her in the kitchen. The black dress was now back in her closet, her makeup wiped clean, and her demeanor cheerful as she greeted him. "How was work?" she asked casually, pouring herself a cup of coffee. Nathan didn't answer. Instead, he slid his phone across the table. The screen lit up with a photo he had taken outside the hotel. Claire froze, her face draining of color. "Nathan, I can explain." "Don't," he interrupted, his voice cold. "Don't insult me by pretending this is something it's not." Tears welled in Claire's eyes, but Nathan stood firm. "I want the truth, Claire. All of it." Claire's hands trembled as she set the coffee cup down, avoiding Nathan's gaze. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," she whispered. Nathan crossed his arms, his voice low but firm. "Then what was it supposed to be, Claire? A harmless fling? A break from the life we built together?" Her silence spoke volumes. "It wasn't serious," she said finally, her voice cracking. "It didn't mean anything." Nathan laughed bitterly, the sound foreign to his ears. "It didn't mean anything? You planned this, Claire. You hid it, lied about it. That's not nothing." Claire's tears spilled over, but Nathan felt no sympathy. He had spent years giving her everything he thought she needed, only to discover that it wasn't enough. "I need time," he said, his voice cold. "You need to leave." Claire moved out that evening, reluctantly packing a bag and heading to her sister's apartment across town. She called Nathan every day, leaving tearful voicemails, but he ignored them all. A week later, she showed up at the townhouse unannounced. Nathan opened the door reluctantly, his expression unreadable. "Nathan, please," she said, her voice breaking. "I made a mistake, a terrible mistake. I don't want to lose us." Nathan let her words hang in the air for a moment before replying. "You didn't just make a mistake, Claire. You made a series of choices. Over and over again, you chose someone else. How do I forgive that?" Claire reached for his hand, but he pulled away. "I'm willing to do whatever it takes," she said desperately. "Therapy, counseling, anything. Just give me a chance to fix this." Nathan's jaw tightened. "I don't know if there's anything left to fix." Over the next few weeks, Nathan found himself drowning in questions. He wanted to understand how his marriage had unraveled without him seeing it. What had he missed? One night, he sat alone in the dimly lit living room, Claire's laptop open in front of him. He hadn't touched it since discovering her emails, but something urged him to dig deeper. He found folders filled with photos from the last 6 months. Work events, vacations, moments he thought they had shared honestly. But then he found a hidden folder, labeled simply D. Inside were photos of Claire and David, laughing together at a restaurant, walking along the waterfront, even a selfie from a hotel room. The timeline stretched back nearly a year. Nathan stared at the screen, his hands gripping the laptop tightly. The betrayal ran deeper than he'd imagined. The next day, Nathan agreed to meet Claire at a coffee shop near her sister's apartment. She arrived looking worn, her usual polished demeanor replaced with exhaustion. Nathan wasted no time. "How long?" he asked, his voice steady but sharp. Claire hesitated, her eyes darting around the room. "Almost a year," she admitted quietly. Nathan clenched his fists, fighting the urge to lash out. "Why?" Claire's tears brimmed again. "I don't know," she said weakly. "That's not good enough, Claire," Nathan snapped. "You had a choice every single time. What made you keep choosing him over me?" She took a shaky breath. "I felt invisible, like I was just part of the background in your life. David made me feel seen." Nathan's heart broke at her words, but his anger overpowered the pain. "So, instead of telling me how you felt, you destroyed everything we had? Do you have any idea what you've done to me?" Claire sobbed, but Nathan stood. "This isn't just about you feeling seen, Claire. You tore me apart to fill whatever emptiness you had. And now, I don't know if I can put myself back together." In the days that followed, Nathan began the process of separating their lives. He moved Claire's belongings into boxes, carefully sorting through the pieces of their shared history. Every photo, every trinket felt like a wound reopening. Claire reached out constantly, sending long texts and letters begging for another chance. But Nathan couldn't bring himself to respond. His friends urged him to seek closure. "Maybe you need to talk it out," his best friend, Eric, suggested over beers one evening. Nathan shook his head. "Talking won't fix what's broken. I don't even know who she is anymore." In the days that followed, Nathan began the process of separating their lives. He moved Claire's belongings into boxes, carefully sorting through the pieces of their shared history. Every photo, Every trinket felt like a wound reopening. Claire reached out constantly, sending long texts and letters begging for another chance. But Nathan couldn't bring himself to respond. His friends urged him to seek closure. Maybe you need to talk it out, his best friend, Eric, suggested over beers one evening. Nathan shook his head. Talking won't fix what's broken. I don't even know who she is anymore. One evening, while scrolling through social media, Nathan stumbled across David's profile. It was public, polished and curated, filled with photos of expensive suits, exotic vacations, and captions that exuded arrogance. Nathan's anger flared. This was the man who had infiltrated his marriage, who had stolen moments that were supposed to belong to them. Without thinking, Nathan sent a message. I know who you are. I know what you did. Stay out of my life. To his surprise, David replied almost immediately. It wasn't personal, man. Claire came to me. Maybe you should be asking yourself why. Nathan's grip on his phone tightened, his vision blurring with rage. He wanted to fight back, to lash out, but instead, he deleted the message thread. David wasn't worth the energy. With Claire gone, the townhouse felt cavernous and empty. Nathan threw himself into his work, taking on extra projects and staying late at the office. It was easier to lose himself in blueprints and designs than to face the silence of his home. One evening, his colleague Lauren stopped by his desk. You've been burning the midnight oil, she said with a smile. Nathan shrugged. Keeps my mind busy. Lauren hesitated. If you ever need to talk, I'm a good listener. Nathan appreciated the offer, but shook his head. Thanks, but I'm fine. Claire, meanwhile, was spiraling. David had distanced himself as soon as the affair came to light, leaving her alone to grapple with the fallout. Living with her sister was humbling. The vibrant, confident woman who had once commanded boardrooms now struggled to get out of bed. One evening, her sister confronted her. You need to stop wallowing, Claire. You made a mess, but you're not going to fix it by hiding. Claire wiped her tear-streaked face. I don't even know where to start. Start by being honest, with yourself and with Nathan, her sister said firmly. One afternoon, Nathan returned home to find a letter slipped under the door. He hesitated before picking it up, immediately recognizing Claire's handwriting. He sat at the dining table, staring at the envelope. Part of him wanted to tear it open, to see what she could possibly say that would change anything. But the other part, the part still nursing a raw and angry heart, didn't want to give her the satisfaction of being heard. After an hour of staring, Nathan slid the letter into a drawer without opening it. He wasn't ready. Claire took her sister's advice and started therapy. Sitting in the therapist's office, she felt exposed, like all the walls she had carefully constructed were being dismantled brick by brick. I don't know why I did it, she confessed during her first session. Nathan is a good man. He loved me. I should have been happy. Her therapist, a calm woman with an empathetic smile, leaned forward. Sometimes happiness isn't about what we have. It's about how we see ourselves in the life we've built. Did you feel like you were enough in your marriage? Claire's throat tightened. No, she admitted. I felt like I was playing a role, like I was the perfect wife, but not really myself. Do you think Nathan saw you that way? Claire shook her head, tears brimming in her eyes. He saw me as everything, and I let him down. Months passed, and Nathan began to rebuild his life. He redecorated the townhouse, painting walls and rearranging furniture to make the space feel new. He adopted a rescue dog, a scruffy terrier mixie named Scout, whose boundless energy filled the silence. Scout became his constant companion on long walks through the city, and Nathan found solace in the routine of caring for him. For the first time in years, he felt like he was taking control of his own life, rather than living in the shadow of someone else's choices. One evening, Nathan received an email from Lauren, his coworker. She was organizing a small gathering to celebrate her promotion and had invited a handful of colleagues. Nathan almost declined, but decided to go. It had been too long since he'd allowed himself to be around people without the weight of his personal life dragging him down. The gathering was held at a rooftop bar with a stunning view of the city skyline. Lauren greeted Nathan warmly, her easy laughter putting him at ease. As the evening wore on, Nathan realized how much he had missed genuine human connection. Lauren wasn't just a kind coworker. She was funny, sharp, and unpretentious in a way that reminded him how joy could be found in the simplest moments. One night, after weeks of therapy, Claire decided to confront her fear. She called Nathan, unsure if he would answer. To her surprise, he did. "What do you want, Claire?" he asked, his tone guarded. I need to say I'm sorry," she began, her voice trembling. "Not to ask for forgiveness, but because you deserve to hear it. I hurt you in ways I can't even begin to fix, and I hate myself for it." Nathan was silent for a moment before replying. "You're right, you did hurt me. But I think the person you need to forgive is yourself." His words cut deep. Claire wiped her tears, realizing he was right. She needed to stop living in the shadow of her mistakes and start working toward becoming the person she wanted to be. Lauren's friendship with Nathan blossomed in the months that followed. They spent weekends exploring the city, trying new restaurants, and attending art exhibits. One evening, after dinner at a small Italian cafe, Lauren asked, "Do you ever think about getting back out there? Dating, I mean." Nathan hesitated, unsure how to answer. "I don't know if I'm ready for that yet," he admitted. Lauren smiled gently. "There's no rush. But when you are, I think you'll find that love doesn't always hurt. Sometimes it heals." Her words stayed with him long after they parted ways that night. David's life took an unexpected turn when one of his business deals collapsed, leaving him in financial trouble. The polished image he had carefully crafted began to crack, and he found himself isolated as his friends distanced themselves. One evening, as he sat alone in his penthouse apartment, he thought about Claire. He considered reaching out, but something stopped him. He had always been a man who took what he wanted without considering the consequences. Now he was paying the price. David realized he wasn't the successful, confident man he pretended to be. He was just a man who had built his life on fragile foundations, and now they were crumbling. After much encouragement from Lauren, Nathan finally agreed to go on a date she had set up with one of her friends, Emily. The date was simple: coffee and a walk through the park. But Nathan found himself laughing and feeling at ease. Emily was warm, thoughtful, and easy to talk to. She didn't pry into his past, allowing him to open up at his own pace. As they parted ways that evening, Emily said, "You're a good man, Nathan. I hope you know that." Her words stuck with him, a reminder that despite everything he had been through, he still had the capacity to be loved. Claire's therapy and volunteer work began to transform her. She started mentoring young women at a local shelter, helping them rebuild their lives after difficult circumstances. Through her work, she found a sense of purpose that had been missing for years. One evening, as she reflected on her journey, she realized she no longer felt the crushing weight of regret. She had made peace with her mistakes, knowing they didn't define her. Claire wrote one final letter to Nathan, not to ask for anything, but to thank him for the time they had shared and the lessons she had learned. Nathan read Claire's letter the day it arrived. Her words were heartfelt and sincere, acknowledging the pain she had caused and expressing gratitude for the good times they had shared. He folded the letter carefully and placed it in the same drawer as the one she had written months ago. This time, though, he didn't leave it unopened. As he closed the drawer, Nathan felt a sense of closure. His past no longer weighed him down. It had become part of the foundation he was building for his future. As the months passed, Nathan found himself thinking less about Claire and more about the future. His friendship with Lauren remained steady, but he couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more between them. One crisp autumn evening, as they walked Scout through the park, Nathan finally spoke up. "Lauren, I need to tell you something," he began, his voice steady but nervous. She stopped walking, her eyes curious. "What is it?" "I've spent a lot of time rebuilding my life. And through all of it, you've been there supporting me, making me laugh, reminding me of what it feels like to trust someone again." He paused, taking a deep breath. "I think I'm ready for more. And I think I want that with you." Lauren's eyes softened, a small smile playing on her lips. "I was wondering when you'd figure that out," she teased. Nathan laughed, relief washing over him. For the first time in years, he felt like he was standing on solid ground. Claire's work at the shelter became a lifeline. She threw herself into helping the women there, many of whom had experienced betrayal, heartbreak, and loss. Listening to their stories gave her perspective on her own life. One evening, as she packed up after a long day, a colleague approached her. "We're lucky to have you, Claire," the woman said. "Your compassion makes a real difference here." Claire smiled, but the words lingered. She realized that for the first time in years, she felt like she had a purpose, one that wasn't tied to anyone else's expectations or approval. Her journey wasn't about redemption in Nathan's eyes anymore. It was about becoming someone she could respect. Meanwhile, David's downfall continued. His financial struggles worsened, and his attempts to salvage his business failed. In a moment of desperation, he reached out to Claire. "Claire," he said when she answered the phone, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. "I need to talk to you." Claire hesitated. "David, I don't think that's a good idea." "Please," he pleaded. "I need someone I can trust." Against her better judgment, Claire agreed to meet him for coffee. When they sat across from each other, she was struck by how different he looked, tired, defeated, and far from the confident man she had once been drawn to. "I made a mess of things," David admitted. "I thought I could have it all, but I ruined everything." Claire listened quietly, but she felt no sympathy. "We both made choices, David, and we have to live with the consequences." As she left the cafe, Claire realized she no longer felt anything for David. Not anger, not longing, not regret. It was the final step in letting go. Nathan and Lauren's relationship blossomed. They were careful, taking things slow, but there was a natural ease between them that made it feel right. Lauren wasn't just kind and understanding. She challenged Nathan in ways that helped him grow. One evening, as they sat on the couch with Scout curled up between them, Lauren turned to Nathan and asked, "What do you want out of life, really?" Nathan thought for a moment before replying. "I want a life that feels honest. One where I'm not afraid to take risks or trust the people I care about." Lauren smiled. "Sounds like you're already on your way." Claire's dedication to her work paid off. The shelter's board of directors invited her to join them as a leader in their expansion efforts, a role that allowed her to combine her marketing skills with her newfound sense of purpose. At the ribbon-cutting ceremony for the shelter's new facility, Claire stood in front of the crowd, her voice steady as she spoke about the importance of second chances. "As someone who has made her share of mistakes," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "I can tell you that growth isn't linear. It's messy and painful, but it's worth it. And places like this give people the chance to find their footing again." The applause that followed wasn't just for the shelter. It was for Claire's journey. One evening, Nathan found himself thinking about Claire. Not with anger or sadness, but with curiosity. He wondered if she had found peace, if she had grown in the way he hoped she would. On a whim, he wrote her a letter. "Asterisk Claire, I wanted to reach out, not to revisit the past, but to acknowledge it. The time we shared wasn't all bad, and I hope you found the happiness and purpose you were searching for. I have. Take care, Nathan." Asterisk. He didn't expect a response, but sending the letter felt like closing a chapter he had kept open for too long. When Claire received Nathan's letter, she read it slowly, her heart heavy with gratitude. She had spent years working to make amends with herself, and knowing that Nathan had found peace was the final piece she needed. She tucked the letter into a drawer, next to a photo of them from their early years, a reminder not of regret, but of growth. Years later, Nathan and Lauren were married in a small, quiet ceremony. Scout wore a bow tie, and their closest friends and family gathered to celebrate. Claire didn't attend, but she sent a small bouquet of wildflowers with a simple note. "Congratulations on your new beginning." Nathan smiled when he read the note, feeling nothing but gratitude for the journey that had brought him to this moment. Claire, too, found happiness in her own way. She continued her work at the shelter, mentoring young women and using her experiences to inspire others. Nathan, Claire, and even David walked separate paths, their lives no longer intertwined, but forever marked by the choices they had made. For Nathan, the betrayal that had once shattered him became the foundation of a stronger, more honest life. For Claire, the mistake she had made became a catalyst for growth and a deeper understanding of herself. And for David, the consequences of his actions forced him to confront the emptiness he had built his life around. Though their stories began with pain, they all found their way to healing in the end. After marrying Lauren, Nathan's life transformed into something simpler, yet far richer than he had imagined during those dark days after Claire's betrayal. Lauren brought lightness to his world. They spent weekends exploring trails with Scout, hosting cozy dinner parties for friends, and dreaming about the future. One evening, as they sat by the fire pit in their backyard, Lauren broached a topic Nathan hadn't expected. "Have you ever thought about kids?" Nathan paused, the question catching him off guard. "I've thought about it, but I guess I didn't let myself dream that far." After everything, Lauren reached for his hand. "I think you'd be an amazing dad, Nathan. When you're ready, I'd love to build that life with you." Her words stirred something in Nathan. For the first time, he allowed himself to imagine a family, a life built not on repairing the past, but on building the future. Claire's role at the shelter expanded as her success grew. She became a frequent speaker at events, sharing her journey with others who needed hope. But with her growing influence came criticism. An anonymous blog post surfaced, accusing Claire of hypocrisy. The writer, who claimed to know Claire personally, accused her of pretending to be a saint while hiding her past mistakes. The accusations spread quickly, and Claire found herself at the center of a storm she hadn't anticipated. Her colleagues rallied around her, but the whispers and judgment weighed heavily on her. During a board meeting, one member suggested she address the rumors directly. Claire stood before the group, her voice steady despite the unease gnawing at her. "I won't deny my past," she said. "Yes, I've made mistakes, some of them life-changing, but I've spent years owning them, learning from them, and helping others do the same. If people want to judge me for that, so be it, but I won't let it undo the work we've done here." Her words silenced the room. Despite the challenges, Claire remained steadfast, using the experience to strengthen her resolve. David, now working a modest job after the collapse of his business, began volunteering at a local mentorship program for at-risk youth. At first, he saw it as a way to fill his time, but as he connected with the kids, something changed. One boy in particular, Jamal, reminded David of himself at a young age. Ambitious but directionless. Jamal's questions about life and choices hit David harder than he expected. "Why do you volunteer here?" Jamal asked one afternoon, his tone skeptical. David hesitated before answering. "Because I've made mistakes, big ones, and I wish someone had been there to guide me before I made them." Jamal nodded, and for the first time, David felt like he was doing something that mattered. A year after their conversation by the fire pit, Nathan and Lauren welcomed their first child, a baby boy named Evan. Holding Evan for the first time, Nathan was overwhelmed by a sense of love and responsibility he hadn't felt before. As the months went by, Nathan found joy in the small moments, rocking Evan to sleep, watching Scout hover protectively near the crib, and seeing Lauren's face light up every time Evan giggled. One evening, as Nathan tucked Evan into bed, he thought about his own father, a quiet man who had taught him the value of patience and hard work. "I hope I can be as good to you as he was to me," Nathan whispered, brushing a hand over Evan's soft hair. For Nathan, parenthood wasn't just about raising a child. It was about creating the kind of family he had once dreamed of, a family built on trust, love, and honesty. Years later, Claire attended a charity event where Nathan was one of the keynote speakers. She hadn't planned to go. It was purely coincidence that she ended up there. As she watched Nathan speak about his architectural projects and their impact on underserved communities, Claire felt a surge of pride. This was the man she had once loved, the man she had hurt so deeply, now standing tall and confident. After the event, Claire approached him hesitantly. "Nathan," she said softly. He turned, surprised to see her. "Claire, it's been a long time." They talked briefly, catching up on their lives. Claire mentioned her work at the shelter, while Nathan shared stories about Lauren and Evan. "I'm happy for you," Claire said sincerely. "And I'm happy for you," Nathan replied. As they parted ways, Claire felt a sense of peace. She had finally closed the chapter that had haunted her for so long. Nathan's life with Lauren continued to flourish. Their family grew, and Nathan's architectural firm gained recognition for its innovative designs and commitment to sustainability. He became a mentor to young architects, teaching them the importance of integrity and resilience. Claire, meanwhile, expanded the shelter's reach, opening new facilities in neighboring cities. Her name became synonymous with second chances, and her story inspired countless others to rebuild their lives. David, though he lived a quieter life, found purpose in his mentorship work. Though he never achieved the wealth or status he once craved, he found fulfillment in helping others avoid the mistakes he had made. Decades later, Nathan sat on the porch of his home, watching his grandchildren play in the yard. Lauren sat beside him, her hand resting on his. "You've come a long way, you know," Lauren said, her voice warm. Nathan smiled. "We both have." He thought about Claire briefly, not with anger or sadness, but with gratitude. She had been a part of his story, a painful, pivotal chapter that had shaped him into the man he was today. For Nathan, Claire, and even David, life had been a journey of mistakes, growth, and redemption. Though their paths had diverged, the lessons they had learned connected them in ways they would never forget. Years passed, and Nathan's life settled into a rhythm that was equal parts fulfilling and peaceful. His family had grown. Evan, now a teenager, was an inquisitive boy with his father's love for design and his mother's knack for seeing beauty in the details. Their second child, Sophie, had Lauren's bright smile and Nathan's calm demeanor. One Saturday, as Nathan worked on a birdhouse in the backyard with Evan, he found himself reflecting on how far he had come. The pain that once defined him had become a distant memory, replaced by joy in small, everyday moments. "Dad," Evan asked, holding a hammer too big for his hands, "how do you always know what to do?" Nathan smiled, brushing sawdust off his shirt. "I don't always know, but I've learned that even when things go wrong, you just have to keep building. One piece at a time." Evan nodded, as if this answer held all the wisdom in the world. Later that evening, as Nathan tucked Sophie into bed, she reached for his hand. "Daddy, tell me a story about when you were little," she said sleepily. Nathan thought for a moment before smiling. "How about a story about when I was your age and thought I could build a treehouse all by myself?" Her giggle filled the room, and Nathan's heart swelled. Claire, too, had found her peace. The shelter had expanded under her leadership, with 3 new locations providing resources to women and children in need. Her story, once marked by mistakes, had become a beacon of hope for others. One spring morning, as she walked through the original shelter's garden, Claire met a young woman named Mia. Mia had come to the shelter after leaving an abusive relationship and was struggling to rebuild her confidence. "You're Claire, right?" Mia asked, her voice hesitant. "That's me," Claire said warmly. "I heard your story," Mia continued. "It made me believe I could turn things around too." Claire smiled, her heart full. "You can, Mia. You just need to take it one step at a time. And remember, your past doesn't define you. What you do next does." David's life had taken a quieter turn. He never regained the wealth or prestige he had once craved, but his work with at-risk youth became his greatest source of pride. One evening, while preparing for a mentorship event, he received a letter from Jamal, the boy he had mentored years ago. "David, I wanted to thank you for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. Because of you, I finished school, got a job, and now I'm mentoring kids just like you mentored me. I hope I can make the same kind of difference you made in my life." David stared at the letter, his throat tight with emotion. For the first time, he felt like his life truly mattered. One crisp fall day, Nathan attended a charity event hosted by a local nonprofit. He was there to support Lauren, who had recently partnered with the organization on a sustainability project. As he mingled with the crowd, a familiar voice stopped him in his tracks. "Nathan?" He turned to see Claire standing a few feet away, holding a clipboard and wearing the same warm, confident smile he remembered from years ago. "Claire," he said, surprised, "I didn't know you were involved with this." "I helped organize it," she replied. "It's been my focus for a while now." They talked briefly, catching up on their lives. Claire mentioned the shelter's growth, while Nathan shared updates about his family and career. "You seem happy," Claire said, her tone genuine. "I am," Nathan replied. "And you?" Claire nodded. "I've found my place." As they parted ways, Nathan felt a quiet sense of closure. Their connection, once fraught with pain and betrayal, had transformed into mutual respect. Decades later, Nathan found himself sitting on the porch of his home, surrounded by the sounds of his grandchildren playing in the yard. Scout, now an older but still lively dog, lay at his feet. Lauren brought him a cup of tea, sitting beside him and resting her head on his shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. Nathan smiled. "How life turned out better than I could have imagined." He thought about Claire briefly, not with regret or anger, but with gratitude for the journey that had brought him to this moment. Her betrayal, though painful, had been a turning point, one that forced him to grow, to heal, and to build a life that was truly his own. Claire continued her work with the shelter until her retirement, leaving behind a legacy of compassion and resilience. Her story inspired countless women to believe in the possibility of a second chance. David, too, left a quiet but meaningful impact. The youth he mentored went on to lead fulfilling lives, carrying forward the lessons he had taught them. And Nathan's legacy lived on in the family he had built, a family that valued honesty, trust, and the beauty of starting anew. Their stories, though once entangled, had diverged into paths that led to growth, peace, and purpose. Each had found their way, proving that even from the deepest pain, something beautiful could grow. Thank you for watching the video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss interesting life stories, and write a comment if you like the story. See you.